A riveting story of a company that toppled global giants before succumbing to the ruthlessly competitive forces of Silicon Valley. The book, Losing the Signal, The Rise and Spectacular Fall of BlackBerry. The authors, Jackie McNish and Sean Silcoff. And you're listening to Lit Society. Let's get lit. Hi, readers. This is Alexis.
And this is Kari.
And you're listening to Lit Society, a podcast about books and drama.
Show you right.
Kari, how you doing? You doing all right?
I'm good. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Good. I'm glad to hear it. You look good too.
Always do. You know, check out Alexis's look. She is serving library chic.
Okay.
Emphasis on chic. You can find that on the YouTubes.
Okay. Listen, you know, we usually have the theme of the week in the front. I'm going to choose to put it in the back.
Okay.
And so why don't we just jump right into the content, the context and author. Kari, what can you share with us about the authors and the context for this book?
So this is a nonfiction book written by two authors, both journalists. The first being Jackie McNish. She's a senior writer with the Globe and Mail English publications, and before that, the Wall Street Journal. She's won 7 national newspaper awards and is the author of 3 best-selling books, 2 of which won National Business Book Awards. She lives in Toronto with her husband and 2 sons. Then Sean Silcoff is a business writer with the Globe and Mail, same as Jackie, and before that, the National Post and Canadian Business Magazine. He is a 2-time National Newspaper Award winner, and he lives near Ottawa with his wife and 3 children. Now, I am getting their bios from Google Books. It is obvious they are both 2 Canadians steeped in journalism and investigative culture, writing about a Canadian company, essentially.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that bit of information about our authors. I will add, I took our intro from the book cover. So there you have that.
No worries. Like that. Usually we write our own intros, but life be life. And
all the time. All the time.
Alexis, who do you think would enjoy reading this book, Losing the Signal?
This book put me in the mind of Shoe Dog, the Phil Knight
Very
memoir.
good. Agreed.
So that's the only one I could think of right off the top.
So why though? What similarities do you see between the 2 books?
It talks about the growth of the company from its nitty-gritty early beginnings. That's the part that drew me in, and how Knight came to be what it is, but not all the details. Like, I think there's still some details out in this book that could stand to be shared. But yeah, those are the kind of things that make me think of Shoe Dog.
I think that's a great comparison because you really fall in love with the passion that's needed to develop something out of essentially nothing. And then to have that thing become a major player on the world, in the world arena, is really admirable. So I do like that comparison between Shoe Dog, the story of Nike's birth and development, and BlackBerry. Of course, Nike's still very much on top.
Yeah.
BlackBerry, not so much.
Absolutely. Kari, why did you choose this book?
Because this month we are featuring books. We're reading books that were turned into movies. And this is a movie that was reviewed highly. I've never seen BlackBerry, the film, but as is typical of movies we haven't seen that are well received, we just read the book.
Yeah, for sure.
So I thought that'd be a good idea.
Well, why don't we then just take a quick break before we jump into our deep dive?
Okay, sounds good.
And we're back. Kari, are you ready to take our spoiler-filled deep dive into Losing the Signal, the rise and spectacular fall of BlackBerry?
Yeah, let me just pull up BlackBerry's website. What do they even sell these days?
They're a software company now.
Cybersecurity. They have left the business of hardware. That is so interesting.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I'm ready to dive into this book. Listeners, I want us to read this book or review it in a way that is not focused so much on the tech alone, but on the story of, as the title says, the rise and fall of this behemoth. If you are unfamiliar with how big BlackBerry was, Alexis and I'm a millennial. I definitely remember this. This is before I could have a cell phone, but I remember this was a huge product. It was something that, well, if you had a BlackBerry, what did that mean? What did that say about you, Alexis?
Business, all the business.
You was making money.
Yeah,
because why you
absolutely.
got a BlackBerry? Who you talking to?
All you saw was people with their two thumbs at it. Okay,
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah, and that was by design.
That was fancy.
Right. Was it the first cell phone? No. However, what BlackBerry did is made cell phones not cool, because cell phones were not necessarily cool yet. Just because you had a cell phone, it wasn't cool. But they actually erased the line between work and life. You could work all the time. You could become obsessed with work, and that's great.
You know, that's so funny, because I was thinking I wanted to do my intro a little, added like the business leader's dream, you know, because they can access you all the time now.
Yeah.
And they loved it.
And you would love it because you were on your BlackBerry.
If and that's what you
great.
want
That's
in life.
efficient. That's success. And BlackBerry creators really tapped into this desire for success. So that's what I think, listeners, we will all resonate with, is this desire for success on a meta level, where the creators of the brand were looking for success. And they were also feeding into this loose definition of what success is for people all over the world. Just with one device, they were doing this. So let's dive into it. Losing the Signal. The untold story behind the extraordinary rise and spectacular fall of BlackBerry.
Oh, I like the way you say that.
So, we meet Jim Bassier. Am I saying his name right? I got it written here phonetically somewhere.
Oh, good. That would be helpful.
Bassier. That's what I'm calling him.
Run with it.
Yeah. So this is Jim Bassier. Can you tell us anything about Jim, Alexis?
As Jim is... Those names were so close. So Jim, is this the one that was the bad student? He was a good student. He was like really smart, but he was like a cut up. He was always making a fool of people. He like made fool of his teachers
Gregarious.
and everything.
Yeah. So when we meet Jim, though, in the book, he's on a private jet to Dubai, and Dubai is really the epicenter of business in the Eastern Hemisphere, right? So this is a very important meeting. Jim's the co-chief executive of RIM, Research in Motion. RIM is the company that founded BlackBerry. We will refer to them as RIM, but know that RIM and BlackBerry are one and the same. BlackBerry is the product, however, and RIM is the company. So Research in Motion, or RIM, has convinced the world that the future of technology is in their hands, or that's their goal at this point. What Jim's mission is to land in Dubai, speak with these exceptional leaders in business, and convince them to stick with RIM products, namely the BlackBerry, the BlackBerry. Because the future will be led by BlackBerry, at least in business. Not Apple, not Samsung. Not Motorola, not Nokia, of course, who have already tumbled, but BlackBerry is holding out. Not since network television, it should be noted, had consumers adopted new technology as they did the smartphone. BlackBerry is not considered a smartphone.
No, right?
It is a device that went beyond what was necessary for the phone, but it was focused on email. The industry narrative at this point, when we meet Jim, is that RIM has lost its way. But RIM still had BBM, which was this messaging system that told you when someone received your messages, when the message was successfully delivered, and when someone had read them. Listen.
BlackBerry messaging, right?
Yeah.
My goodness.
And you didn't have to go to Brazil to get a BBM or Dr. Miami. All you needed was a BlackBerry.
Right.
So I'm really trying to explain how exciting this is to listeners who live in a world where this is just, of course, this is regular, everyday schmegular. However, think about like your WhatsApp that you use to talk to all your European friends. That gives you a check to let you know your message was delivered and a double check to let you know that it was like read or whatever. And of course, your iPhone, when you're messaging iPhone to iPhone, you also see if it's read or not.
Your friends around the globe. Okay.
Yeah,
around the globe.
Point. For BBM, if you were messaging someone that also had a BlackBerry, this was one of the first devices that let you know your SMS message was received. And that was a huge, it just aided the communication process for people, both in their personal lives and professionally. James was eager to check his emails as he's on this plane about to land in Dubai. He needs to know the state of the company and the atmosphere of the room he's about to walk in on. Emails are the crowning function of RIM's product, of the BlackBerry phone or the BlackBerry device. And he had helped create that feature, but there was a problem. Servers crashed. Now, not going into too much detail, just know that a router malfunctioned and its memory was wiped clean. BlackBerry also distinguished itself by having its own servers and its own system of not hoarding, but hoarding and moving information. This added to the security that a lot of corporations liked. They liked that idea that these were on private servers. They couldn't be hacked. It was even hard. We'll get to this later on, but some national leaders demanded BlackBerry released the information being stored by their citizens in their citizens' personal phones. And BlackBerry couldn't even really do it. They was like, well, we don't know. That's
you don't do it,
good. We did a good job. We wouldn't do it, but we can't. So just know that was the selling point to own a BlackBerry. Even when President Obama was inaugurated, he refused to give up his BlackBerry in need of a private communication device. But that also made them vulnerable to technical mishaps like this one. So for the first time, a widespread disaster occurred where their entire network was in jeopardy and BlackBerry users everywhere were going through withdrawals. People called BlackBerry crackberry because they were always hunched over their phones like it's regular now, but they wasn't on TikTok. They were sending emails and making money.
Yep. There was just emails.
Or at least being slaves to the businesses that employed them. So this is the environment, though, that James had to give his company, in which James had to give the saving pitch for his company. No one listening in the full audience cared about anything James was saying when he finally got there. All they cared about is when their crackberry was going to be functional again, because without emails, it was little more than a paperweight. All right. So what's BlackBerry, right? BlackBerry had created a world where people never were off of work. Like we said, work was 24/7. Anyone could be reached at any time. When the servers came back, cell phone users were hungrier than ever for their devices, but BlackBerry had lost the signal. You see what you did there?
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Yeah, it's from the book.
Mm-hmm.
James Basilier was born in 1961 in Seaforth, Ontario, to Raymond Basilier, an electronic technician, and Laurel Basilier. There is an event in 7th grade where a teacher is at the front of the board trying to write out this long problem, and the teacher is stumbling. He turns to the class and goes, "Can anyone point out where I went wrong?" James says, "When you were born." Class clown. For that, he is punished by not being allowed to receive the teacher's instructions for a large test that's being held in the region. However, it turns out the smart aleck was actually smart, and James got first place on that test, studying on his own. Yeah. He was from a blue collar family, really loved hockey. His 3-step plan to becoming someone was to go to a top undergrad school, start working for a top firm, and then go to Harvard Business School. He went to Trinity College with Malcolm Gladwell. He was an overachiever. Everyone could see that he was trying to prove something. To who, it was unclear. After graduating Harvard Business School, he joined Sutherland & Schultz, a Canadian tech company, shocking those who saw Wall Street as his next stop. But Basilier had other plans. Now let's meet Mike Lazaridis. No, Lazaridis. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. So Mike Lazaridis was born in Istanbul, Turkey. I love Istanbul. To Greek parents. He was 5 years old when his family moved to Canada in 1966, settling in Windsor, Ontario. At the age of 12, he won a prize at the Windsor Public Library for reading every science book in the library. This is an exceptional child.
Absolutely.
He was an electronics whiz in grade school. Teachers started asking him to come over to fix their electronics. His, like we said, first generation family from Turkey. He admired his parents' adventurous spirit, which he considered entrepreneurial. They were leaving their homeland to forge a new path in a new country, start new businesses of their own. He really admired that. What I'm trying to say is that he was family oriented, and that started even when he was younger. He was a science loving, thrifty, and beloved by all for his easygoing spirit and smile. He became the boy electrician, a mad scientist. He taught everyone from the students and teachers how math could be used practically with electronics. His father gave him advice, though. Don't get too seduced by computers. The one who puts computers and wireless communications together is really going to be something. Lazaridis didn't have to write that advice down because he never forgot it. His school began sharing papers and research across an electronic network that would become, it was basically like the grandfather of the internet. And he saw some potential in that. At the University of Waterloo, he established himself as the entrepreneur. Student. The university let him work for himself for his third-year co-op placement, developing electronics. By hooking up an early computer to a cathode ray tube, he and his research partner, Doug Fragan, created a device that would transmit data to project information to a television screen. Now, at Waterloo, Lazaridis saw a grander application for technology. A cathode ray tube, by the way, is a vacuum tube containing one or more electronic guns which emit electron beams that are manipulated to display images on a phosphorescent screen. So from this, we see early seeds of what would become the BlackBerry phone. It's BlackBerry, right? I haven't said that word in a long time. It don't sound right. Why was it named that? We'll talk about that too. Mm-hmm. Custom designed circuit boards, computer memory, central processor, and calculator-sized keyboard all put together. They called it the Budgie. And it was a high-tech product for its time. So he's in college. He's established himself as the student entrepreneur. He's making something already. Him and his partner designed the Budgie, and now they want to sell it.
This right? is the commercial thing, right? The advertising tool, right?
So it is not that great. The thing is, it was capable of doing more than they were selling it as being able to do. Let me explain.
Please,
so they pitched it as what, Alexis? Like an electronic billboard?
Yes, exactly.
You know, if you having sales every day, but it's different sales in your store, instead of changing out the signs, you could just change this. They didn't see it. They didn't see the vision. They misunderstood their true market. The new company that they founded, now it's just Lazaridis and his college buddy, right? The new company is called Research in Motion, RIM. 5 years later, And the ad system, Budgie, still hadn't took flight. Okay, this is an ad system. RIM began surviving by creating innovations for a wide range of industries on the side while still believing in and pitching the Budgie. Side note, one of these inventions actually earned RIM an Emmy and an Oscar. They were making this on the side, but they created something that like could read film using a code.
Okay.
And yeah, they won an Emmy and Oscar in their free time. Some DiCaprios would be jealous. During this time, sophisticated walkie-talkies.
Play.
Yeah. Walkie-talkies and large brick mobile phones were being developed by the likes of Motorola, for example, but the tech was cumbersome and not consumer friendly and expensive. You know, movies from the 80s, you see people driving around calling folks on their car phone, and it's weird because it like forces you to stay in the car. You want a conversation? Go to your car.
I remember the first car phone I saw was in the 90s. And she kept this big thing up in the back seat of her car on the floor.
And that was the car phone.
And then she would pull it out and make that phone call. Mm-hmm.
So Alexis is saying in the 90s. Now, if you Gen Z or Gen A, I know the 1900s seem like a far way away, but it ain't. All this technology advanced so quickly and cannibalized each other until there was basically one company to rule them all. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's Apple. It ain't RIM, but that's okay. So yeah, during this time, those large, cumbersome, not consumer friendly phones were the only things really associated with the idea of mobile phones. Wireless data networks were not living up to their potential. Ericsson, Nokia followed Motorola's strides. So, even as they developed hardware that was meant to be cool and flashy, they weren't working on their networks. They weren't working on their software. So it wasn't a lot these phones could do but call. And at this time, it's like, that's huge.
Yeah.
To be able to have a phone call in your pocket eventually. Well, RIM as a company was 8 years old when they met their wife. And that's James Vasilier. Yeah, that's his name. James Vasilier, the James we met at the beginning of our story. They met him and was like, oh, he don't know much, but he got personality. Lazaridis met him and was like, you are the extrovert to my introvert. What I know in technology, you understand in blind ambition and word wizardry. So before the partnership was solidified, Lazaridis was like, Basilier, you have to come and meet my wife, Ophelia, because she's a great judge of character. So they had dinner together. When James Basilier left, Ophelia said one thing to her husband. You remember?
I don't remember the exact words, no.
She said, he's a shark. That guy, he's a shark. She warned her husband that evening. And Lazaridis was like, yeah, but he'll be our shark.
Yep. And she said, just remember, he is a shark. It's a good idea to add him to your team, but just know who he is.
Mm-hmm. Basilier was more predatory than Lazaridis, less honest, more ambitious, taking his business cues from the art of war, literally. He was like, oh, yes, the art of war. Except, you know, the art of war is like win the battle without ever entering the fight. And he didn't understand that part. He was ready to fight all the time.
Because if there's a section in a book and they talk about a part that he did not include while he read that book religiously. He like missed the point. So
yeah, that was the part. And he read it. He just it probably was against his character. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he enjoyed arguments and fighting, and just being a champion for himself and no one else. So RIM had a competitor that was making more headway in the world of portable office aids. It was called US Robotics. They purchased Palm Computing. You guys, I'm this year's old.
The Palm Pilot.
The Palm Pilot was the best cell phone ever made. And then toward the end, they started making it where it had a tactical keyboard, which I really do miss. I do hate touchscreen keyboards, but it would slide up from behind the screen and you could have a keyboard. And then when you was done, you slide it back down and made a cool noise like click, Oh, you be poor feeling rich, or I was. But their first device was like the Palm 1000, and it was an instant hit with professionals. You have the actual keyboard and then a small screen on top. But the keyboard took most of the real estate up on the device. Anyway, there was a takeover dinner with Carl Yankowski. Can you describe the personality of Carl?
So Carl is this, what's important to him is one-upmanship. So they would tell a story. He would tell a bigger and better story. Really like the Oprah Winfrey, because they call her a one-upsman person. So
it reminded me of that movie with Martin Lawrence when he's like, team on me. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
When he like become really big and he goes see his family and they like bring him back to earth. And Suge Avery, his mama.
No.
Man, somebody is at home like, yeah, that's such and such movie. Man, Alexis.
I don't know it. Sorry.
Give me your black card after the show.
Okay.
Anyway. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. He's always, in fact, they started messing with him during this dinner. So this dinner is supposed to be seriously about RIM taking over Palm computing. This is huge, right?
Yeah, big deal.
But Carl is so into himself that he is off-putting to both Lazaridis and Basilier. There's a point when Basilier is like, just to mess with him, he like, I've won like 3 Olympic awards for Canada.
Medals. He was making up stuff.
Yeah. And so Yankowski goes, well, I've won 4. So under the table, Lazaridis and Basilier begin like nudging each other.
And
like,
keeping points.
Keeping points. Well, anyway, Palm didn't meet the needs of corporate folks because emails sent from their devices weren't instant. It wasn't like ping, bing, bing. Okay, it took a while.
Bing, bing, bing.
And users would have to pull out an antenna and wait for a connection. Now, maybe I ain't this old because I don't remember that. Could you imagine holding your phone and you got to pull out an antenna and wait?
I remember the antenna phones. I had one of those.
Like, do I have a connection? That's wild.
I had one of those. I remember.
Y'all know Alexis just a baby. Anyway, so it did not connect also to corporate email servers because there's security issues. You know, you got this open platform. We can't have our emails going. So you couldn't use it for business.
Right.
So now RIM is seeing the value, the need really to develop a device that is for communication. We're not yet going to call it a cell phone. Okay. It's just a device for people to communicate with each other.
Communication device.
Internally, they start calling this device Leapfrog. It is the BlackBerry 950. What they wanted to distinguish themselves in the market was what, Alexis?
Email, right?
Absolutely. This is the race to face wireless email. Now, what would they call the device? Remember, internally, they're calling it Leapfrog. Then they said, no, let's call it Blade. Blade is sexy. Okay. That says a man. You know, you want a blade. Well, Blade lost because this is a time, you guys, where the internet was flooded with pornographic images. Even whitehouse.com was a site for pornographic images. So they couldn't get Blade because you remember why, Alexis?
Yeah, the stuff that came up behind Blade.
Yes. In fact, they sent out a company email like, what do y'all think of Blade? Don't look it up.
Don't look it up.
And people started responding, ew, no. So then they were like, stop, my eyes. Ah.
Don't look it up.
So then they were like, well, what else can we get? How about BlackBerry? It's fun to say BlackBerry. BlackBerry. Sweeter to BlackBerry. So that was fun to say. It reduced stress connected with email device. No, BlackBerry. It's not an email device. It's the BlackBerry. That's fun. There were certain pain points that the BlackBerry solved. Like people hated to be, let me say this. Yes, there is an overwork culture that just will never go away in a capitalist society. But also for an international company or even anyone trying to compete on the international or in the international arena, while you're sleeping, while you're at home, someone else is beating you to the finish line constantly. People hate that. So in order to keep up with commerce all over the world, they wanted a device where they could handle business, actual business, and respond to emails 24/7. This is the pain point BlackBerry wanted to solve. And then once it was released, people became addicted to it, like we said.
Addicted.
So addicted that RIM struggled to keep up with its success. Users went from 25,000 in 2000 to 165,000 users just a year later. That's insane. They began hiring 2 people a day, scrambling to find room for everyone. They didn't have a proper billing system to charge their customers or their staff to pay for their staff service.
They were poorly run.
Yeah, because they're growing exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was people out there using the BlackBerry, not paying for nothing. Because the BlackBerry company, the BlackBerry company couldn't catch up with their client base. And when this was brought to the attention,
they weren't even keeping
of upper
track
management.
of it. They were just giving phones away practically and not even knowing who they gave them to charge them.
But listen, just a few hundred people was getting free service. And if you gaining thousands of clients, this is the thinking.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
You know? RIM's in-house network gave them the ability to encrypt and decrypt emails without the user noticing. So they made sure that on the path from the sender to the receiver, those emails cannot be read. They were secure. And by the time the user received them quickly, those emails were already decrypted. Email was the special sauce, not two-way messaging, but email. Now let's take a break, especially for our video podcast viewers, to go back in time to the world of mobile devices. Alexis, did you have some devices you wanted to share with the class?
Yes, teacher.
From your archive?
Look, 3.
And I want you to tell us what each device does really well.
I have 9 devices, 9 old devices. A couple of them are duplicates.
Alexis, you are a hoarder. No judgment, but get help.
Listen, I don't know the order in which they came. They're really old, but I probably have the charger. Antiques. Look at that.
What? Oh, I love that. That's a sidekick, eh?
I think so. I'm not sure. I don't know what this is.
It was just Alexis and Paris Hilton walking around with those.
This is the
I remember
LG.
The cool girls had.
LG.
Oh, okay.
Another LG. And I got 2 of these because this is the chocolate. Do you remember this?
Okay. Oh, that sounds familiar.
I think it was called the chocolate. Love that.
Weird because it's not brown.
I think it was something, readers, if y'all know, tell us.
Probably like a candy bar. They wanted it to sound fun, but the chocolate is just a weird name. Yeah.
I don't know what this is. Did I show you this one already?
Let me see.
It's another LG. LG.
My God. Does it fold?
Yeah,
or what does it do?
It's a fold. You know, they kind of recreated this one already.
Yeah. I hate those foldable phones.
Another LG.
A lot of our friends have those.
This is the Motorola.
Oh, is that a razor?
I think so. Yes, a razor.
They did it before SZA. Yeah. You know, they removed the vowels. Yes. So it was razor, RZR or something.
That's a Motorola. Cool. Here's another Motorola. Now, I don't know which this one is.
Now, why do you have these devices?
I don't know. Found them in a bag one day, and I was like, I need to get rid of these, but I left it in the bag and walked away.
So Alexis is thinking if she ever loses her phone, she can just have one of these reconnected, but she can't.
No.
Because no one is going to give her service on these phones.
Have more. I have a flip phone.
Wow.
This is the Kyocera.
Come on. That's cool. Can you close it so we can hear it? Oh, yes. And say, don't call again or something. Like snap a little
I'm
bit.
hanging up on them?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I can't do it.
Oh, my feelings hurt. Oh, I love it. That's wonderful.
Okay. Oh, that's my phone. This is my Samsung. I went into my Samsung stage. I left LG behind, and we was like Samsung riding for years. Absolutely. So this is my Samsung. Okay. Mm-hmm. Another. Oh, wait. Oh, no, wait. There you go. I hung up on you. Okay. I hung up on you. And then another Samsung.
Okay, more iPhone-like. So this was after 2007, probably.
It's 4G, okay? It's 4G.
Okay, definitely after 2007, yeah.
And then, this is my Galaxy, Samsung Galaxy. Wow. Okay, this was the thing. I love the
so
Galaxy series. And then the latest and the greatest is my my Google phone. Okay.
Oh, let me see. Is that what you're using now?
Yeah, I use it sometimes.
Really? Because you do have an iPhone.
I do have an iPhone. I love it. I don't know what to do with them. I tried to get rid of them a few years ago, but I don't know. Can't just throw them in the garbage. You're supposed to be able to do something with them.
These devices weren't free, and a lot of time and ingenuity went into the creation of them. It's just so sad that we're such a consume and discard type of...
Yeah, consume and discard.
Type of culture. So yeah, I get it. It makes you feel guilty. Like, how many people worked on this?
Yeah.
And what was the working conditions? We'll get to that.
Also that. Okay.
Bit. So anyway, thank you, Alexis. Now, if you're listening to our podcast somewhere and not watching the video, there is a section where Alexis has walked us through time from the Great Depression until today, showing us all the cell phones she has collected. I'll remove that from the audio only format. Let's continue. Okay, so the culture has to change to meet growth and demand at RIM. There's a difference between Lazaridis and Basilier, right?
Yeah.
The yin and yang, people might say. They work together very well, but they're very different men. They don't hang out after the office because they're not the type of people that would hang out with each other. But Basilier was a great personality and believer in the brand to talk it up, to market it, to help develop it. Lazaridis was the nerd, and he loved that. He loved being in the lab. He loved research and development. So they worked together beautifully. But work was the only language they shared. There were some blind spots for RIM and both Lazaridis and Basilier. For example, color screens and toy-like features were seen by RIM to be a waste of time. Phone capabilities were first seen as unnecessary before accepted. Phone capabilities. They was like, who do you need to talk to? You should be working.
But that's how they ran their company too. They was like work. That was their life. So,
and if you need to talk to someone, send an email. I mean, now with Teams and Slack, I don't even be sending emails like that.
Listen, and then on top of that, when they presented it to the, they talked about it with company leaders. They weren't interested. Nobody wants to be taking phones and sending instant message. What? Get out of here. We need to
give us our emails. We need emails.
Whack.
Right. The first BlackBerry froze constantly. You could only make calls by inserting a separate headset into the device. How embarrassing. Then you'd have to pull out an antenna. But things changed on 9/11. Phones near the World Trade Centers were wiped out. Cell phones.
Yep.
BlackBerries were the only tools for communication for many people. BlackBerries were the lifeline that day. Some people, the last message they sent to their families was from a BlackBerry device. Others found out their people were okay and alive because they owned a BlackBerry. If you just had a cell phone, you did not have service. The White House then began using BlackBerries, and then secret agencies began using BlackBerries. Again, this is on a private server, so there's some security there and some dependability. If all the phones go out, you should be able to use your BlackBerry. BlackBerry became the pipeline to the nation's top secrets.
So governments, businesses, they were using it because of their secure communication software.
Yes.
Or however that is. Mm-hmm.
Now we get to the section of the book that is appropriately titled Game of Phones. Just to give you an idea of the type of person James B. was, Basilier, he walked into a meeting with top movers and shakers in Europe, And it was like a dinner, a sit-down dinner. He arrived early to change everybody's place settings so that he sat next to who he wanted to sit next to. And then he walked in a little later and asked surprised about where he was sitting. Oh, am I here? Am I here? Okay. He was selling up a storm. He made it all look so natural. You know, oh, you need to do this. Wouldn't it be nice if you could do this, this, and this? Yeah, that would be nice. Well, you can. Did you know they doing it in the Americas? Get on board. You're right.
Yeah, he was really trying to reach out to the other parts of the world and get the BlackBerry in their hands. And this was his opportunity. He saw it, he took it, and took advantage of it.
And the culture in a lot of other parts of the world isn't like it is here. And so a lot of people are like, I want to send emails all the time, huh? Do I? Are you sure? What about living?
What about life?
He could tailor the capabilities of the BlackBerry to fit whatever the client desired. That was Basilier's, strength. They eventually formed bonds with the top service provider in Britain, Vodafone across Europe. And what still held people back was this extra service fee that you had to pay for owning a BlackBerry. This was BlackBerry's way of being able to keep up their private servers. So in order to have that security and the capabilities of their devices, you actually had to pay a premium to your phone bill. And a lot of people were like, well, that's a deal breaker. They eventually tried to rework the math so as to absorb that cost and things that clients were already comfortable paying for. There was also an issue with the service provider, because when you think of Vodafone or here, Verizon, they want some investment in what is being sold to their clients. So they're providing the service. Really, BlackBerry or RIM is a hardware manufacturer at this point. People aren't investing a lot in the software. They're just making the device. And once the device can do what it does, then the service provider provides the road for that device to show its skills, right? Mm-hmm. So they want some investment. Then there were negotiations about that. But all the while, BlackBerry is not dipping into loans. They are self-sufficient. And I should say RIM is still gaining momentum and still strong because their device is highly desired and they're able to afford both the development of it and the sustainability needed for their clients on these private servers.
Yeah, they're a cash-strong organization.
Right. And some people don't understand the need for a secure email provider. So agnostic email software was being shared through other devices, some created by Nokia, for example. So what BlackBerry did was pretend to court these hardware companies. So, for example, one famous one in the book, RIM begins discussions with Nokia to develop BlackBerry Connect, which is a way for BlackBerry for RIM to get in the game of agnostic email software that doesn't need to be tied to just the BlackBerry device. You can then take the private servers and put them on other phones, so you get the starring feature of a BlackBerry, but on the device that you choose. And some might think, well, why would you do that? Why would you help the competitors? In RIM's mind, all the time you're taking to form relationships with us so you can get BlackBerry Connect, you could be making your own private servers and you just choosing not to. They had talks with Nokia. Yeah, no, we're totally going to get you hooked up with BlackBerry Connect. Your clients are going to be thrilled. They had Nokia wasting so much money in devices that did not have BlackBerry Connect because they knew they were never trying to seal the deal with them. They were just wasting Nokia's time and money. And then things changed. So up until this point, RIM is really for the corporate dudes. Okay, it's not a consumer product, the BlackBerry. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are people who have it for status reasons, but usually if you have a BlackBerry, it's because you actually need it at this point. But then it was featured on Oprah's Favorite Things. Woohoo! And the audience is screaming and, wetting themselves. And Oprah's like, let's breathe. I love the BlackBerry. and BlackBerry's sales start going through the roof. However, people like to have it, okay? But it's large, it was wide, and to hold it up to your face was embarrassing. So someone suggested, well, why don't we remove the keys? Why do we need an actual keyboard on here? But Lazaridis especially was so devoted to the product and the fidelity of the idea. He was like, never will we not have a keyboard. Choose something else. So what they did was decrease the size of the keyboard to the point where one key would become 2 buttons. And you press it and 3 buttons would depreciate or, press down. And it was like, it was hard to use. But they also developed intuitive software to help because they knew the spelling would be off. They tried to work on like some spell check software. Yeah. Then they started falling behind with fun things, quote unquote, fun things like apps. Nokia developed Club Nokia, which just kind of think like the Apple Store, kind of, but like way less than whatever you're thinking.
As successful.
Yeah. But you could buy like a Soulja Boy ringtone here, and that was cool. So they wanted to keep consumer services in the hands of service providers and not phone makers. The service providers did. So like we have the Apple Store now, or you'll have like the Google Play Store, I think. Mm-hmm. But that means you're not going to the T-Mobile store to buy your apps. You're not going to the Verizon store. And that's normal now. But at this point, service providers still wanted to be fully in the game. However, RIM had its own data network and began shipping phones with secret applications that allowed communication and customization services where neither the consumer nor the service provider knew the phone could do that. The service provider started trying to sue BlackBerry, and BlackBerry was like, we don't need your approval to have features on our phone. And they eventually won because carriers were like, all this data people are using that we're charging them for is becoming more lucrative than anything we could have imagined. So yeah, we're cool. We're cool with this. Long-term RIM employees, though, began to feel like lost in the company. They started when it was still up and coming. It was still driven by passion. And now it's becoming a corporation. A lot of big wigs actually quit to like some of them become nature photographers. They're Canadian. So a patent suit and the threat of losing 80% of income by losing their North American market really stopped RIM cold. They actually lost this suit where it was decided that their technology for their email capability was stolen from someone who had thought of the idea first.
That's crazy.
This was a long, drawn-out process, not on RIM's side, and they lost. However, the patent department held up that actually RIM doesn't owe anyone anything for developing this because the patent alone did not create the technology. Right. Now, this is from the patent department, not the courts. So the courts was like, especially the judge involved in the case was like, I don't really care what the patent department say. It's about my courtroom and what I decided.
Crazy.
And
crazy.
Yeah. So
was that 63 million?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. That and then like I think Basilier and Lazaridis themselves also, I think, had to pay a couple million.
I don't remember them having to pay. I just remember in another suit where they had to make some changes with. So I don't know. I don't remember.
Well, this caused an existential crisis for James Basilier. He hired a guru to help him see value in living. Lazaridis relied more on his family. And then the launch of the so-called Jesus phone happened.
The Jesus phone.
Apple directly compared their new phone to the clunky BlackBerry, the old man device. It was now the iPhone was nearly twice the price of a BlackBerry, but it was more than a phone. It was the internet in your pocket. Yeah. Okay. They didn't even have like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. They didn't have it yet. It was just the idea of being on the internet.
It was early stages.
Yeah. Google saw the potential right away and launched Android. BlackBerry would have to start over and their keyboard would have to go because people were now enticed by the idea of no keyboard and a full touch screen. Not me, BlackBerry.
Yeah. And
I still have my Palm Pilot. And by the way, Palm Pilot was like, we out. And I was like, but I just bought this. They was like, you crazy because we folded. Have you seen the iPhone? You should get it. Anyway, the iPhone launched in 2007. It wasn't as secure as a BlackBerry. No one cared.
It had a lot of issues when it launched too.
Oh yeah, it was also during this time the iPhone has issues, but it has this great marketing campaign behind it. So BlackBerry is still right. So BlackBerry is still being crippled by its own growth, and it has a lot of features that are way better than the iPhone. However, the iPhone is saying touching is believing. And then they started having release dates that coincided with religious holidays, biting into the idea that this was the Jesus phone. I don't even know what that means. I know it's wrong. And then iTunes. People was like, ain't nobody gonna be having their music on iTunes. That was wrong because for a lot of artists, iTunes was a welcome change from like predatory behavior in the music industry. They could just put their music on iTunes and people would hear it. So the iPhone was slow. Nobody cared.
They were still buying.
They were still buying. It wasn't for corporate boys, but for everyone. You know, the battery lasted you a good 30, 40 minutes. No one cared. People still like their iPhones and they would just walk around with big power adapters to charge it like I do now.
They were like, why would somebody like that? Walking around with big old adapters to charge your phone. That's dumb.
They did it.
They did it and they loved it.
AT&T had an exclusivity deal, so they were carrying iPhones. And it was running their servers to the ground because it was so much data needed for the full functions of the iPhone. Calls was dropping left and right. AT&T started to get the name of being a non-trustworthy service provider because the calls were dropping all the time. No one cared. No one cared. It was beautiful. The iPhone was marketed well and it looked good and beauty matters. Lazaridis and Vasilier played down the abilities of the iPhone, and that started to make them look out of touch. Yeah. Lazaridis eventually had to accept that the touchscreen was needed. For the touchscreen he disdained so much was the future of technology. Then the Storm was launched. The BlackBerry Storm was launched in 2008, and investors were thrilled. This was more in line with this new cell phone idea, okay? Steve Jobs was cool, by the way. People loved him.
The way he talked?
Yeah, everything about him. He was just the cool boy of Silicon Valley. Whereas Laz and Bao were awkward.
Yeah.
They were awkward in front of the camera.
They talked sciencey when they talked in other
especially Lazaridis. Vasilier was always a little angry. People was over it. So Motorola lacked the tech for smartphones and continued releasing the Razr, which I'm sure Alexis has 5 of. Talks began for BlackBerry to buy Motorola, but those talks fell through, and Vasilier would later regret underestimating RIM's oldest competitor, Motorola. So let's wrap this up. Lazaridis believed the mind could will things to happen. Y'all ever read The Secret? Me neither. But I know that's about just thinking something can happen and it happens. That was Lazaridis, okay? And he was like, BlackBerry will never fail because we believe in it too much. That ain't good. In order to fill large orders.
That don't get you nowhere in a society like this. You got to be progressive.
Yeah, they wanted the next phone to fill all the orders they'd received and to be available in time for the Black Friday demand. So BlackBerry sacrificed quality control for mass production capabilities. They were living by the seat of their pants. The released Storm phone should have never reached the market. Users described it as embarrassingly horrific. It was slow, if it worked at all. Reviews were devastating. People were returning them all the time, and Verizon eventually demanded compensation for RIM for all these returned products. But RIM was like, all we done for you, Verizon, you gonna be all right. We friends. You'll forgive us. Because if we pay you, that's setting a dangerous precedent, and we ain't gonna do it. So
I was like, nope.
Would Verizon forgive them? No. Stock fraud then entered the scene. It turned out that, especially Vasilier wasn't being completely honest, I believe, when it came to the value of the company. Some dates were being changed in order to make the company seem more valuable than it was.
Yeah, they were changing stock dates.
This started increasing the rifts between Lazaridis and Vasilier. Corporate misconduct charges were brought forward. They paid millions. The CEOs agreed to step down for a time. Vasilier suffered the majority of blame, even from Lazaridis, who threw his partner under the bus, basically. BlackBerry would never be the same, and the relationship of its chief executives was breaking. But the company is still a hit, with corporate boys who don't want fun distractions on their phones. Meanwhile, the App Store from Apple is leaving BlackBerry in the dust. BlackBerry would have to completely change its platform to compete, and that is a move that few companies survive. Verizon, Google, and Motorola then paired up. They formed a trio. This is the Motorola move that Vasilier would actually come to regret, or he would regret not buying Motorola so that this couldn't happen. Verizon, Google, and Motorola began working on a new phone. Microsoft and Palm folded under the heat of the trio. If BlackBerry stormed work, this would have never happened. But now RIM was fighting for its survival. Lazaridis and Vasilier began bringing on executives that didn't match a united view of RIM's future. Chaos ensued. Vasilier compared it to having a house full of roaches. It was time to make a tablet now. You got all this going on, lawsuits, missed opportunities, and now you got to make a tablet because the iPad is a huge success. But the iPad is intuitive for users because if you have an iPhone, you know how to use an iPad already. Yeah. What would BlackBerry do, right?
Can't keep
They
up.
decided to create the Playbook. Why do you think they called it the Playbook, Alexis? This is their tablet. This is the tablet that's going to rule the world. The Playbook.
Child, I do not remember.
This sounds like something a dad would make. Like, you're a coach. You're the coach of your life. You need your playbook. It's masculine. And also, Vasilier was like addicted to hockey. So maybe that has something to do with it. Crazy. So the problem was Playbook couldn't do emails. And that was the prize feature of the BlackBerry.
He was
now you have a device.
His emails as like the primary thing that BlackBerry. So you could not take him away from that. It's not happening.
In the 2000s, when you have a state-of-the-art messaging system, you are so focused on emails.
It was like, they got to go to the internet and get it. No, we got a better way to do it.
Yeah, so he was like, the Playbook don't have emails. That's our shining feature. What we're going to do is create a bridge. So the tool would bridge the Playbook and your BlackBerry. You would need a BlackBerry to properly operate the Playbook. Now you got to buy both devices. Great. Without Bridge, the user could not access their emails, the pillar feature of RIM. But the Bridge was solving a RIM problem, not a user problem. So it wasn't going to work. Also, JavaScript is trash. It's slow. You can't create tack-sharp graphics if you're writing in that programming language. And that was the language RIM was still using. So developers began passing on building apps for Playbook. Meanwhile, iPad users could use a fully stocked Apple Store. They was having fun over there like, bing, bing, ba-doo, boo, boo. I ain't even got a job. Few people within RIM were asking the right questions, and some even lacked the knowledge to know which questions to ask. RIM still had two standout successes at this point. BBMs, okay, like a real housewife. No, BBMs was the BlackBerry messaging, right? That still works great, and it's still really, really cool at this time. And the international market still like they BlackBerries. They making songs about them. Yeah. Okay. Government leaders at this time, specifically in Egypt, was like, give us the records of every citizen in Egypt who has a BlackBerry. And BlackBerry was like, I can't. Vasilier specifically was like, you're stressing me out. You know what? We don't carry BlackBerries in Egypt no more. We out. We outside.
Wild.
No, we out of Egypt. Yeah. So they just left Egypt. However, the two CEOs weren't seeing eye to eye still. That bridge for Playbook drained battery power at an alarming rate. So while RIM was poo-pooing 4G also, they was like, you don't need 4G.
Everything.
They was like, we got G's at home. They was really acting like the dads. Everybody was like, let's get 4G. Why? You got 2G at home.
And 2G works just fine. So why do you need 4G? Yeah. That's what he said. Yeah. There's no need to advance to make.
But remember, he's all about the hardware.
Yeah, true. Crazy.
So, but while they were doing that, other companies were investing in 4G. Now we got 16G. Anyway, RIM was being left behind.
For real.
Now RIM was putting everything behind a rush release of Playbook, which still lacked an ideal market. Nobody knew who this device was for, really. And a new BlackBerry needed to be released that was 4G enabled. Their programmers, their developers were just being worked round the clock, and they still weren't going to meet their deadlines. Bal and Laz refused to step down. A mutiny was threatening. Stock prices were plummeting. Losses were more than expected. And now we're back at the outage that we found at the beginning of the book. So Lazaridis reads from a teleprompter informing everyone that no, the servers aren't back up yet, but we're working on a solution. And that announcement was received disastrously. So the book also doesn't make it clear that we've now reached full circle. I don't think there's enough alarm here. Service providers demand compensation. BlackBerries are being sold at steep discounts. In the end, Basilier was yelling at investors, yelling at them. And they was like, okay, you got to go. This the investors, right? Both men were warned, in order to avoid a mutiny, y'all need to step down. And they like, we already agreed to step down behind closed doors. We already talked about it. And that's the end.
Yes.
Alexis,
they stepped down.
Should we take a break?
Let's take a break.
Okay, great. Alexis, please let us know what our theme of the week is this week.
And this week's theme of the week is what to consider before giving your child a smartphone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought this would be fun. And, you know, I came up with it as I was talking to my nieces and my daughter. And one of my great nephews was here and he had a phone. How do you think children should be when they get a cell phone?
How they should what?
How old do you think they should be?
As soon as they're going to be away from home for an extended period of time. So whether that's K5, K4, they make cell phones with limited abilities where the child has 2 buttons or whatever and knows how to call mom and dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
as soon as that.
I'm from the past. So my daughter had a phone at, she said at age 12. It was for emergencies, but she used it to text her friends. I remember looking at the sheet with all the phone calls on them, the text messages, because you could see all the text messages on it. And I was like, you're texting these people? Who is that? And you could see all of that. It was really crazy. And then when she took it to school, somebody stole it. Now, I don't remember how I felt that day, but I felt a little mad about that when she was telling me now. So that's crazy. I agree with you, though, whenever they start to move around. But I looked at a couple of articles. One was from Harvard Graduate School of Education, when to give your child a smartphone. And another one was what age should you give a kid their first phone, from the Washington Post. And they had several suggestions that I thought were helpful to consider.
Oh, give them
the first one was understand your family values. Now, this is like, before you even think about giving a phone, think about these things. What's important to you and your family? Is eating dinner uninterrupted important? Do you want to instill a sense of responsibility with your child? Are you teaching them? Is it important for your children to know empathy and kindness? So that's a conversation, again, before you even consider the topic of a phone. And then the next thing is about talking about technology with your school? How is it used in school? How are their friends using it? And how do you as a parent use it? The goal is to build awareness and ultimately learn how to regulate their relationship with devices. So talk technology with your child. And then start young. Don't wait till they're 13 to introduce the phone. This day and age, I don't even think that's reasonable. The article said, just like you introduce books when your children are young, introduce technology when they're young. It gives you an opportunity early to educate the child, demonstrate etiquette, and test out rules. And then it said the fourth one was know your options. All children don't need a fully loaded smartphone. As Kari mentioned, there are different types of phones that you can have. They're making them specifically, devices specifically for children these days. They have limited access, a couple of buttons on the phone, those kind of things. I remember my niece, she said she gave her 5-year-old a phone, and she did that because she didn't want him to mess with her phone. So it was a free option. So he's over there with his phone and she has her phone. So it's not playing around with it. So it's it made sense for her. But she said he doesn't take it out of the house. But what she said was she thinks it makes sense for children to have phones by 12. And also my other niece said the same thing. She said she initially said that she got her first phone when she was like 6 years old. But that's because she was moving about. She would be between her parents' home, and then her father would not always answer the phone. So if the mom could call the child directly, then you don't have to worry about or be upset because dad isn't answering the phone. Another thing to consider is to be savvy about device use, because a lot of the things that can be done on a smartphone can also be done from a tablet, a laptop, a desktop, and even Kindle. Even making phone calls can be done from these other devices. So consider that as well. And then it said, understand how your child's school uses devices and technology. I think that's most important, because sometimes maybe a child is using a phone and they misuse it in the parent's mind, and they don't want to take it from them because they know they need to use it from school. Well, the best way to get around that is understanding how the school uses it, how the teacher expects the device to be used. And knowing this, having this conversation with the teachers in advance will help you make better decisions, help parents make better decisions about what to choose for their children.
I like that.
And then develop rules together. Set the rules, period, okay? And then set limitations. Talk about who's paying for it, who's going to know the passwords, what happens if the phone is broken, stolen. All those things need to be taken into consideration. And then I think a final point was there's a couple more. One other point was to model the behavior you want to see. So if you're using the phone at dinner, don't be mad if your child is using the phone at dinner. I mean, you could, but, they're going to follow what you do. So if that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing. And then another one, and this is always interesting to me. Stop texting your child all the time, particularly during the day. Like in schools, they don't want the children using a phone. I went to a school the other day, and they put the phones in some kind of padded thing and then seal it. But the children have learned how to open that.
That's what they do at comedy shows.
Yeah, so they lock up the phone so you're not able to use it during school hours. But parents are still texting their kids during school.
Just sending them memes.
Or period
and
messages.
Like funny TikTok.
Yeah, and so don't get out of the habit of doing that. Don't do it.
Get a friend. That is not your friend. That's your child.
Okay.
No, I don't have a dog in this fight.
Yeah, okay.
Do whatever you want.
And then if you have more than one child, consider catering the rules for use of the device to each one of those children, because it's going to evolve as they age and as they develop or learn more responsibility in life. And ultimately, that is that on things to consider when you want to give your child a cellular phone or a smartphone.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, you're going to be mad if you're 17 and your parents still making you use the phone you had when you was 5 because you haven't shown responsibility.
Absolutely. So that'll be that. Shall we jump into the conclusion and get our opinions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's hear it,
So
Kari.
Alexis, what did you think of this book, Losing the Signal? Would you recommend it? And did you enjoy it?
So I love the title of the book. It's a great title. The Spectacular Fall. I do not love the back and forth. I was so confused by their back and forth.
Between Lazaridis and Basilier.
Well, going back in different stories. Yeah, I didn't like that. I couldn't keep up with it. I was like, wait, what are they talking about again? Especially in that initial one. It was just so startling. So I didn't like that aspect of the book. But I did think the story was interesting. There's a lot of technical information in this story, and I don't like that. Well, not that I don't like it. I'm not a tech person, so that's not my thing. I know some basics about usage, but that's not my strong suit. So it was a little overwhelming to me. But overall, the story is there. I loved learning about this rise and spectacular fall of this company. There were so many, I won't say so many, but when they should have been evolving as a company, they ignored so many opportunities that would have kept them top tier.
Afloat. Because they were so devoted to the ideas that they had created, but not the ideas of their potential clients.
Yep. They thought this was always going to be the case. And that, so that was a wild thing. So I would recommend the book if you enjoy stories that talk about the rise or the growth and development of other companies. And I did think it was a good story, even though I had some issues with it. I did think it was a good story, and I would definitely recommend this book to others because they had some passion. For sure, they had passion, but they just didn't have what it took to stay on top of that. How about you, Kari? What's your final verdict, and would you recommend this book?
Like you said, this is a great story, but I don't feel it was handled in the best, most intriguing way by the writers. These men are risking everything that they care about for this idea. The stakes are high. Basilier lost a wife. Okay. He really became devoted to a guru just to talk himself out off the ledge. Okay. I think that this, even when we come full circle, we meet James Basilier on the plane to Dubai for the meeting of his life. When we're back at that moment toward the end of the book, I don't think it's, you could almost miss it.
You could.
As a reader.
I was like, wait, is this the same
and it's
part
pretty important.
from the beginning? I'm not sure.
Not enough attention was brought to this moment. And maybe this moment wasn't as monumental as it seemed in the beginning of the story, but then don't open the book. I
know because that was a dropped ball for sure.
I think it would have actually been better to open the book with the end of the Lazaridis-Basilier partnership and what that private conversation, just speculation about how that could have been. And then at the end of the book, you see how we got here. How these guys who were completely devoted to each other professionally ended up being people who talk to each other once every 10 years now. You know, how did that happen? They spent over 3 decades building what was once the pinnacle of mobile communication.
Boy.
On emails. And it's also a great warning if you're trying to build something yourself, to not fall in love too much with your own greatness and your own capabilities. Listen to your clients and to the market. Understand clearly before you even pick up any tools. Understand clearly who your client is. Because even when Lazaridis created the budgie, he made it like a little mini billboard. That it could do way more. He had basically invented a large, what would become the great grandfather of the smartphone. Mm-hmm. But he didn't care about that.
And I think that's what makes this book worth. I know you haven't given your opinion, but no, that's what makes this book worth reading, because there are so many lessons in there. There are missteps you can all learn from. If you're trying to build a business on passion, there's so many things that you can pull out of this book to help you stay on track and instead of missing out.
But I thought the book was boring. I would not recommend it. I think the story deserves a better storyteller. And that's just my opinion. Mm-hmm. But no, I did not. It made me appreciate American Prometheus, the story of Oppenheimer, which, by the way, that is a book I still think about. And I think it was a good book.
Kari,
I think it was actually a good book.
You are not wrong. I thought about that when I was reading this. I was like, maybe it wasn't.
I confused my dislike for Oppenheimer and his values with a dislike of the book. But that was my mistake. This book, however, is not good. And I would not recommend it. I did not enjoy reading it. And sometimes they would say stuff and I would be like, hold on, that's like a big deal.
Yeah.
But we own to auxiliary personality and where they came from. They went to Harvard and now they one of the executives and everyone hates it. I don't care. I do not care.
I do not care.
So there's that. Okay. Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend this book, and it's unfortunate because the story is a great little piece of history, technological history.
I think it's a great title. What are we reading next
great
week,
title.
Kari?
Catch Me If You Can by Jessica Nabongo. No, this is not made into a movie, but her life is very cinematic, and so it fits the theme. If you don't know Jessica, she has a very famous IG account. What's her handle on IG?
I think it's Catch Me.
The Catch Me If You Can. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So we're reading her book.
Okay. Well, thank you for listening to Lit Society. We look forward to meeting up with you next week, Thursday. Lit Society is brought to you by me, Alexis Honoria, and Kari Herrera. Support the cause by leaving a 5-star review for our show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Do it.
You can leave a comment there too about why you love us, because we love you too.
We love you too.
If you've enjoyed what you just heard, tell a friend about Lit Society. Visit LitSocietyPod.com for show notes, this month's book list, and to sign up for our amazing email newsletter. And until next time, readers, read something.
Read something.